Good evening from the home offices of Bristol, Connecticut. This is Dave Stevens, and if you're wondering what I'm wearing tonight, it's my hockey jersey because I do play a little sled hockey these days. But it's in honor of our guest tonight, and I got to throw out the theme song here because it's a great opportunity to also bring in my co-host out of Minnesota, Troy Geary. And you know what that theme song, guys. You know what that music must be that we're hearing this SportsCenter stuff that's in the background, right?
Oh yeah, one of the most
I'm
iconic
familiar with
songs.
Can you
SportsCenter.
can you guess? Can you guess who our guest is tonight out there in radio and podcast land and everything? Well, of course, nobody's guessing, but I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guest tonight, Linda Cohn. Linda, of course, has been, I don't even want to say how many years because you never give away a woman's age. And so we just say you have been in a
Well,
good place for a long time. Linda Cohn joining us tonight on the Geary, Stein, and Stevens Show. Thanks again to our viewers, our listeners on Ability Media, the Disability Channel, our fans on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and we welcome all of you wherever you listen to podcasts all over the world. I'm excited because Linda and I worked together for over 20 years here in Bristol. Linda got to get to go out to Los Angeles and, of course, do so much with hockey and continuing to make a difference and an impact to little boys, little girls, and everybody that aspires to be that little Dave versus Goliath and make it. So, Linda, with that introduction, thank you for being on our podcast.
wow, that's some introduction. And there's so many things I want to unpack there from that introduction. First of all, Dave, how come your name isn't first on this podcast? That's number one.
You got to ask Troy that. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, no offense to Troy or Will, okay? That's number one. Number two, honestly, I'm just so proud of you. I just love everything you've done. This is just a tremendous stage. And thank you for having me be a part of it. And anyone who wants to know how old I am, all they have to do is Google me. Everything's out there. So
That's what's
it's all good, Dave.
Yeah,
To
that's what's
answer
scary.
to answer Linda's question, we saved the best for last. So
Oh yeah, nice reply. Okay, Will.
Well, Linda and I, we could sit here and just reflect and talk. I mean, Linda and I, our conversations, they weren't always about sports and the Yankees and the Red Sox. They were about who was your favorite BG? What did you think of the
Yes.
Village People? Barry Manilow, Lionel Richie. I mean, Linda has such a vast music taste. In fact, when you talk to Neil and those guys and the Sports Center, you guys talk a lot of music. But
Yeah.
we are just it's so glad to have you here just for the time that we have you here, and we want to talk about your career, your accolades, and I'm going to let Troy kick things off because we have so much, like you said, to unpack.
All right. Well, you just celebrated your 30 years at ESPN, over 5,000 sports centers. What are you most proud of during that time? And do you remember your first show?
Yeah. First show, I was nervous. The great Chris Myers. I worked with him on a Saturday night at 2 a.m. Eastern. There he is on cue. It was a half hour, just 30 minutes. But my goal was not to screw anything up and just kind of look happy and all that. And I sure was. And what do I guess, what was your first part of the question about what am I most proud of? I got it. The fact that I could have kids, raise a family at the same time of living out my dream and, playing the role of a sports center anchor and a reporter. When honestly, guys, I mean, it was just so natural for me because I'm a fan first. And that's how I feel why I lasted this long. I connect to the viewer that way because they're all fans. And when I first got the job at ESPN, I was like, that's what I want to show people, that I'm just like them. Because the people that watched ESPN, especially in the old days, my goodness, they're all fanatics like me. And that's why I wanted to always prove to them that this is where I want to be. And I'm just like them. Crazy.
well, I was 4 years old 34 years ago, but that's a whole nother story for another ball game. So during your time at ESPN, how ESPN grew and how your career grew, I've seen that a lot of women specifically have gone into the sports field because of what you've done during your time at ESPN. What does that mean to you, and how does that help you as you continue your career in the sports industry?
Yeah, that means a lot to me because it gave young women back in the day hope. They saw a woman doing something that they never thought they could be doing on a nightly basis, hosting SportsCenter, talking about their favorite teams or just teams in general. So it gave them hope. And that's what I get a lot from the viewers over the years and the fans over the years saying, talk about it, speaking about my impact. As it was happening, guys, I didn't really think about it. I was just like, oh, I got to kick butt each and every show. I got to do better the next time. Because sadly, at times, most of the time, I was a perfectionist. And I did feel the pressure, too, that I was carrying a torch, so to speak, felt like I was representing all women, and I couldn't let them down. And I couldn't let myself down or the people that believed in me and supported me. I didn't want to let them down. And that was really my mission statement, always in the back of my mind.
Linda, you talk about that mission statement, and now in this day and age, especially in the last few months, where we're talking about women's right to their own body and to choose, and the chaos and everything going on with election, it's got to be tougher and tougher when people look to you for guidance or look to you for what your thoughts are, and yet you still have to be a journalist and yet stay in that ESPN mode where you can't talk about it, you can't say I support this or whatever, but yet the women still want to look to you as you are a role model, not just to women but to men as well. And I wonder, how tough is that now to walk the line, especially in the climate that we're in right now?
I think we all have to do that. If you're on social media, if you host podcasts, whatever it is, you have to be careful of what you say, and it's none of anyone's business anyway. It's none of anyone's business how I feel about certain topics that could be polarizing for some. But I don't think, and I would advise people, if they're looking to me, for me to put out how I feel about some hot button topics in the world, I'm a sportscaster. Okay. I mean, don't come to me. I mean, privately, we can have that conversation, but I am not going to put out there on social media. I know a lot of my colleagues have done that in the past. Some of my ex-colleagues did. I just don't think, I think there's a time and place, but I don't think it when you're employed. And if that is the rule of your employer, not to speak of these things, then you don't speak of these things, but it is a fine line, and you do have to be careful. And I still want to pay the bills, Dave.
And you have to commentate on, let's say an athlete refuses to get the COVID virus shot, and then he's the big story for that team. You've still got to talk about these topics, and you can throw in a little personality, but you can't cross that line.
Yeah, I even do that when I fill in on Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Obviously Aaron Rodgers made so much news being immunized, or whatever that word is, Dave. Dave, what's that word? Immunized. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Immunized. There it is. Immunized. So not vaccinated. And then, we all found out, he wasn't vaccinated, but who am I to say, type of thing. So, we as SportsCenter anchors, or if I'm doing talk radio where I do give more of an opinion, I still kept away from voicing my opinion. I give people the facts, let them create their own opinion on what they hear from me. But, again, I like doing sports. If I wanted to go into news, I would have gone into news 35 years ago, 30 years ago. I chose not to, even though there are some topics, as you mentioned, Dave, that, I'm pretty passionate about one way or another.
Yeah, you called Serena Williams highlights for her first U.S. Open championship. She just finished her career at the U.S. Open. What are your thoughts of her amazing career?
Yeah, I think she's the greatest of all time. That was really cool. There was a colleague of mine. I was hosting SportsCenter the other night, last Friday night, whenever the date was, I believe it was last Friday night when Serena lost in the third round in the U.S. Open in what is her last U.S. Open appearance. And a colleague of mine said, hey, Linda, guess what? You did the highlight on SportsCenter back in 1999 when Serena Williams won her first U.S. Open championship and her first Grand Slam singles title. And when you asked earlier, like, what's a cool thing or what, that to me, I was like, oh my goodness, that is pretty cool. Like it's hard sometimes, guys, to stop, for me, to stop and realize, yeah, I've been on TV a long time. Yeah, I get that. But that's still pretty cool that I'm still doing it. And I coincidentally happened to do her first highlight when she won a Grand Slam singles title at the Open, and her last title when she made her farewell. But she's the greatest of all time. She changed women's tennis. She brought power to women's tennis. I just love all of it. And she never stopped being herself. She was genuine. She was herself. She was who she was. And that is what I love most about her. She didn't try to fit in to someone else's opinion of how she should be. Venus, too. And that is what I admire and respect and love about Serena Williams. No, she wasn't perfect. No, early in her career, yeah, people didn't like her. People accused her of being a, B word and everything else. But hey, nobody's perfect early in their career. She learned from that and she used it to her advantage. But she had that chip on her shoulder, and she just had such drive, and she was going to do what it took to become the champion that we have watched play out in an amazing career. Best ever.
And I think it's lost, but yet it's almost poignant that we're seeing the greatest tennis player, and if not one of the greatest African-American athletes, and an African-American tennis player has gotten even farther on the men's side than anybody has in a long time. So it might be that passing of a torch to a great black athlete in tennis. And it would be really neat to see, because tennis really needs another booster, because we don't have anybody great in the wings. So I think it really is. It's been such a great moment to be a part of and to be around. And yeah, thank you for your thoughts and insights on that. So we've got to pay some bills. So please stay with us. Linda will come back, talk a little more about what it's like to live here in Bristol. We can talk about some of the food places and things like that. But don't go away. You're listening to the Geary, Stein, and Stevens show. According to Linda, it should be Steven, Stein, and Geary. Yeah, so we'll see what we do at the end of that.
Yeah, work on that.
Don't go away. Hi again, everybody. Dave Stevens here for Manscaped. And you know, what you see on the outside isn't always what you get down below. And what's the best way to get rid of all this unwanted stuff below the waist? By using the complete line of Manscaped products to get rid of all that unwanted, unsightly hair from down below. That's because Manscaped has come out with the Performance Package 4.0. Inside this set, you'll find their Lawnmower Waterproof 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker Ear, Nose, and Hair Trimmer, Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, Crop Reviver Toner, Performance Boxer Briefs, and a travel bag to hold all your goodies. So, if you want to get rid of this, or you can look like this, thanks to these amazing Manscaped products. And if you check out now and enter the code GSS Show, you save 20%. So go to manscaped.com. Your boys will thank you, and the significant others in your life will be happy too. You want 20% off the world's softest, comfiest, best-fitting men's clothes? Well, Fresh Clean Threads has your back. They have your front, your sides, and everything else. From tees to tanks, Henleys to polos, pullovers, and hoodies. Get designer quality basics without paying ridiculous designer prices. Everyone deserves to look good and feel great. Confidence shouldn't cost a fortune. Go to freshcleanthreads.com. Use the special code GSS Show for 20% off your order. Your perfect fit awaits. And we do want to thank all of our sponsors out there for Manscaped and, Coke and Pro Stance and all those things. And I'm telling you, the Manscaped products, I keep using them. The razor, you don't always have to go below. You can use it on your face. I've got this nice little beard going, and I get all that ear hair and stuff out of there. And then you got the great deodorants, and it's like these guys care, because these headlines, you can see them all over the place, all over the country. So again, thank you to our sponsors, and thank you. That's an uncomfortable segue, Linda, for our next part of our podcast.
Hey, I got to tell you something funny. So last year when I did a hockey podcast with Emily Kaplan, that was one of our sponsors for a while, and I read the promo. Now, it wasn't as great as your whole acting ability as you did in the commercial and all this. It was just audio, but I'm very familiar with Manscaped because of that promo I had to read.
Yes, and to quote Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie, she'll like it too. So, it's sad that we've watched our athletes that we grew up with hawking things. I mean, you must run into Shaq all the time. He's either pimping pizza or taxes
Everything.
or everything.
You know what I can't figure out, and I love Shaq because he's very talented, but I can't figure out why advertisers keep going to the same well all the time. I, as a consumer, why would I trust that person if they promote everything? Why? Why would I trust that person? Go outside the box a little, right? So I love what you did, Dave.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I don't know if the world's ready to see me with and without legs, but if it helps, we've moved products. We obviously have that, right?
For those that don't know, you're a big Knicks and Rangers fan. What are your thoughts on their off seasons and or lack of, maybe for the Knicks, and expectations this season?
Yeah, well, I'm busy preoccupied with my Mets right now, obviously for great reason. The Knicks, I was hoping for Donovan Mitchell, didn't happen, sadly. But we got R.J. Barrett newly signed and extended, so that there's that. Also, who did I leave out? Oh, the Rangers. Well, you know what? Lot to be happy about. Can't wait for them to build on what they gained in the experience from losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. They're going to have another remarkable season. They're going to have another 100-point-plus season. And to me, they have to at least get back to another conference final because if they don't, it's a serious step back. Ranger fans are impatient, even though we had to wait so long to get that Stanley Cup in 1994. But now we add up the years. It's been a long wait again. So, but the Rangers have the best goalie in the league in Igor Shesterkin, so they're in great shape. The Knicks, they can't compete. They're making little baby steps. And the Giants, I have no faith in Daniel Jones. I'd love to see him prove me wrong. But as I mentioned to you guys when we were just talking earlier, I'll say it again. He'll make somebody a nice backup quarterback someday. I never believed in him. He's a nice guy. But at least, Eli, my guy, was a nice guy too. But you know what? He played his best when it mattered most. I mean, Daniel Jones he's missing a few tools in the toolbox, so to speak.
I feel your pain on trying to get a quarterback. We haven't had a quarterback since Fran Tarkenton with the Minnesota Vikings, so
Yes.
we got that going for us, I guess. I think Kirk Cousins might potentially be the guy. I don't know if he will be, but we'll see what happens with that. But that's something we can talk about for another day. But
Yeah.
speaking of the state of Minnesota, it's the state of hockey. And
Yeah.
obviously you're a big hockey fan from what I've been told about and from
Get
some
on
of
board
those.
with the Wild, Will. I mean, the Wild, they made a nice little run. They had a great regular season. A little disappointing in the postseason, losing to St. Louis, but I don't know. They got something going on. Get on board.
Well, go ahead, Will.
So obviously with this Minnesota being the state of hockey, everybody goes nuts over hockey up here in Minnesota. They broadcast, it seems, nationally on the in the hockey industry.
The high school
Have you ever,
tournament.
in the high school
Yeah.
tournament, have you
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
about coming up for the high school state hockey tournament to making a guest experience?
I've never been
Appearance.
invited. I've never been invited to something like that. That would be remarkable. It kind of reminds me of how, football is in Texas, right? I mean, it's just, high school. When before I got to ESPN, I worked in Seattle, Washington at KIRO TV. in Seattle. And one of my jobs each and every Friday night during football season was to cover high school football. And it was really, really, and still is huge in the state of Washington and in Seattle and surrounding areas. So I'm well aware of how popular high school sports are, and at least in Seattle was high school football, but Minnesota, great equivalent of high school hockey. Wow, huge. That's fantastic.
And if you didn't know, Barry Melrose a couple years ago called some games for the state tournament.
Nice.
Speaking of playing, you've done some playing in your days. With the Florida Panthers, we got a video here. You suiting up with the Panthers.
Yeah, they had this great promotion. They were actually in real life. All their goalies got hurt, and so the great PR staff of the Florida Panthers a few years ago put out this audition and said, "Hey, we need an emergency e-bug. They call it emergency backup goalie." And I said, "I'm going to try out. What the hell?" I didn't do too bad. I had a guy on the Panthers at the time, Sean Thornton, shooting pucks at me during the audition. And I stopped 10 of the 11 shots, but I did it more for just to let people know and let myself know I could still get those pads on, all 40 extra pounds of those pads, still move, still make saves, still swallow up the puck, and not embarrass myself. Boy, was that a fun time. And I really thank the Panthers for including me in that.
Yeah, it's been great to follow your career from you played college hockey. People don't realize that you were a goalie in college, and you've continued to showcase what women can do in a male dominated sport, just like you have done in a male dominated business. And so I'm wondering, who were your role models? Because you had a couple of people. You had a Phyllis George, or you had there were very few ones. So who did you try to be like? Who did you want to be? And all of the things you've had to overcome, even you've talked about in your book, the things that got you to this level. But what was that one, that person that you said, I can be like them, or I can be better?
Yeah, Dave, great question. Yeah, I wrote back in 2008 a funny book, look at myself through a book called Cohn, a no holds barred account of breaking into the boys club. You can get it for $2 on Amazon right now. But anyway, who are my role models? Who do I look up to, at least in the business? Because obviously my parents were my role models, because they always supported me when no one thought, how can I be a sportscaster? I'm a woman. But it was really men that I looked up to, the men that gave me opportunities along the way, even before I got to ESPN. Guys like Frank Brinka, the news director of my first job at WALK Radio in Patchogue, Long Island, who allowed me to, I volunteered to cover the New York Islanders as long as they paid for my gas. And I covered, because I grew up on Long Island, I covered the New York Islanders, and that led to other opportunities. Or, even a guy like Ed Ingles, probably my biggest mentor, sports director of WCBS AM, before there was Sports Talk Radio. He let me in New York City do sports updates on the radio. It was unheard of to hear a woman do sports. You gotta think about that for a second. This is New York City, okay? And also I did some reporting, but New York City doing sports updates before talk radio. And it was on an all news station. But those I modeled myself after, two guys off the top of my head. And Dave, you're well aware, especially of this one I'm going to mention, the late, great Tom Mees. Tom Mees was one of my favorite people. I'm so grateful. Before he passed, I had a chance to know him well, work with him, all those late nights on Fridays and Saturdays hosting SportsCenter. And why I think of Tom often is that he was a fan, and he got that out there, and he didn't care about being on camera. He didn't care about winning awards. He didn't care about making athletes cry. He loved doing highlights, the art of the highlight, and he was athlete friendly, and he was fan friendly, and he was very animated, even though you couldn't see it because he wasn't on the screen. He was very animated when he did highlights for SportsCenter. And a quick story, the first Sports Center I actually hosted after Tom Mees passed away with Jack Edwards on Sunday morning. And this is the honest truth, okay? I'm not, I felt when I was doing sports highlights that morning, whatever was going on in sports, I I like channeled Tom Mees, and I felt the presence of Tom Mees because Jack Edwards looked over at me and he's like, he couldn't believe it. Like I was very animated. I was waving my hands. I was doing a lot that was Tom Mees like doing Sports Center. And so he was a big one. And the other guy that I modeled myself after was a guy, not Chris Berman, who I do love endlessly, but Len Berman. Len Berman did local sports for WNBC in New York. He was also a national guy as well. But the greatest thing about Len, he always did his sports reports on TV like he was talking to you. Just talking, no catchphrases, no yelling, none of that. He was just like he's talking to, his best friend and telling his best friend what happened today in sports. And I said, you know what? That's the perfect way to deliver a sportscast. Like you're talking to your best friend. And those are two that really meant a lot.
Speaking of ESPN, you've been involved in some great commercials and promos over the years. What is your favorite one that you remember? And do you remember this one that Dave's going to show with the late John Clayton and your memories on him?
Yeah, those commercials are great. I would have raised my hand and said, "Can I do this one too?" I never said no. I mean, and it's time consuming. You're there all day shooting the commercial, but my favorite. I have so many favorites. I got to do Sports Center commercials with Henrik Lundqvist and Mike Richter, the two greatest Ranger goalies of all time. But perhaps one of my funniest and ones I love the most is a commercial I wasn't even in. It was a Sports Center commercial that Kenny Mayne was the narrator of, and he was talking about a daycare. Manny Machado was running the daycare, and there was this cute little girl, actress, and she was whining about everything. And then finally, the punchline happens at the end, and she's whining, and she goes, "I want to meet Linda Cohn," like that. And I was like, this is like amazing. So that could be my favorite, and I wasn't even in it. Now, John Clayton, we all can remember the greatness of John. I knew John, and I love this video you're showing. I knew John in Seattle because I worked in Seattle, Washington, as I mentioned, at KIRO TV. And that's where I first met John Clayton, waiting for Seahawks players. We got talking. And John, like myself, the people don't know, was a big hockey fan. He was a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And I being an avid Rangers fan, and I've only was in Seattle for close to 3 years. And John and I would go on road trips with the Seahawks PR guy at the time and a couple other people. We got in a car, drove to Vancouver, and to see hockey and to see my Rangers. And I believe we saw his Penguins one time too. So that is how I'll remember John, besides being the professor, as we all called him. But he was just a huge hockey fan, and we bonded in Seattle even before we were working together at ESPN.
And Linda, it's been really tough for those personal losses. I remember Tom Mees sitting his daughter on my desk the day,
Yep.
And he saved her drowning,
Yes.
and we've lost Stuart Scott. We've lost Pedro Gomez. And it's
Yes.
just like, you're almost like that parent. You're not supposed to outlive your kids. And yet we have this bond that is unspoken.
Hank Goldberg is another one.
Yeah. Hank just passing. And it's just
Yep.
like, we were a family. We were in the trenches. We have these Emmys together from the things that we did because we were there in its heyday. It's not the same anymore. I'll be honest, I can't watch it as much because it's a lot of talking and screaming heads. That's because it's a different audience now. We can get everything on our smartphone in 2 seconds.
Right.
So,
That's right.
So my question to you is, we're sad about the losses, but how have you reinvented yourself, stayed hip, stayed on top of technology? And we watched people like Kenny and everybody else get pushed away, yet you're plugging along and you're still there.
Well, I don't know what was behind, why Kenny decided to leave and everything, and they decided to part ways with him. Maybe I'm loyal to a fault, Dave. The grass sometimes isn't always greener. And since I was raising a family at the time, both my kids are grown now, but I got accustomed to what you were talking about, being a family, being part of a community. Sure, ESPN and SportsCenter has changed over the years, but how do I stay relevant? By not forgetting what made me successful in the first place, connecting to the fan, making believe that someone's watching me for the very first time, not assuming they know who Linda Cohn is, not assuming they know that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to sports. This is what was very important to me. And as for staying hip, I was one of the first to join Twitter back in 09. I just thought it was a cool thing. And the reason why I loved it and social media, especially early on, because it was a way I could connect to my fans. And again, another avenue to let them know that, hey, I know, you can come at me. Back in the day, Dave, I said this in a few chapters in my book. You could probably attest to this and confirm it. Before social media, if you just found the number of ESPN, the switchboard in Connecticut, and you call up, it could be like the worst person in the world. Oh, sure, you want to talk to Linda Cohn? Here, let me put you through to her. And we go, right, I need to pick up the phone. Or there'd be these messages waiting for me on my voicemail. And you have to remember, when I first started in 1992 at ESPN, there were a lot of parts of this country that could not handle a woman giving them sports. It was like I might as well have been from Mars. It wasn't going to happen. And they let me know it. And it was really kind of hurtful. And it doesn't matter. And that's when I realized it doesn't matter if you're perfect at what you do, because there's going to be some people who don't like you. And that's one of the messages I continue to educate young people about social media. How you can't believe and trust or care or give any energy to any mention you get, good or bad. Because guess what? They don't mean anything. They're not people who know you. They're not your family. They're not your friends. Those are the people you can trust, not those people on social media. So pre-social media, I had to deal with all that, which was eye-opening.
And I think your social media explosion came when you picked a number 15 to upset a number 2 back in the NCAA tournament. Do you remember that?
Oh my gosh, I did, didn't I? That was crazy. I know. I mean, Dave, you have to go out on a limb sometimes, right? You got to make a bold prediction. Now everyone's doing it, and nobody holds these people to it when they screw up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, speaking of screw-ups, we've made enough, but we're going to take one more commercial break, and when we come back, we'll put a nice little bow on Will's head and get him out of here. So continue to watch Steven, Stein, and Geary. I do like the ring of that. Don't go away. Hi again, everybody. Dave Stevens here for Manscaped. And I've been in baseball for almost 40 years, despite not having legs, and I know what it takes to put in a good turf, and that's what Manscaped is all about. What Manscaped does is protects your boys down below, cleans them up, gives them that fresh cut feeling, and also you don't smell like a locker room after. And right now, Manscaped is offering the Performance Package 4.0. It's arrived, and oh man, it's a game changer. Inside this package, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear, nose, and hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all the goodies. So right now, if you'd like to save on Manscaped products, go to manscaped.com, type in the code GSSShow, and you will save 20% on Manscaped products, because Manscaped really works, and of course, you want your balls to feel as light as air. I got nothing more to say coming out of that. So,
who writes your material? Who choreographs it?
I'm a one-man band. If you notice the product placement of the baseballs and things like that for our podcast viewers. For podcast viewers, you're missing a great show online. Thanks to Restream for what they do. I'm a one-man band here with Troy and everybody doing camera switches and graphics and stuff. So as Linda has just pointed out in the last segment, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. So reinventing ourselves is what we do. And Linda, as we wrap up, if you and I were sitting around having a beer, which we used to do at the White Birch back in the day, when you could put in a 10-minute tape, go over, have a beer, and come back for the rest of that segment, what would stand out in your mind as that Linda Cohn defining SportsCenter moment where it's just, you're like, I made it, or this was a great moment, or this is the epitome of where I ever wanted to be?
I don't think I could single out one moment, but what's pretty cool that I still find cool after all these years of hosting SportsCenter is the opportunity to, when something amazing happens in sports, and it could happen that night, and I'm due to host SportsCenter like a half hour or a minute after it happened. I mean, the other day there was some big knockout in boxing, and I'll tell you, before the show started, I was like, I wasn't really all in on the boxing. And then I was on this particular bout. I can't remember the name, but the point is, it doesn't have to be a sport I love. It doesn't have to be a sport I'm passionate about. If I know the viewer is passionate about it, and SportsCenter, that particular one, was following that boxing bout when we had a huge upset, and you could feel the emotion of the guy that got the win and the emotion from the guy who lost unexpectedly. And that's still exciting to me, that I can talk about something like that, or I could bring that to the viewer and do the highlight of it just in case if they missed it. So that's what I look for at this time, where, guys, it's just, that remains an exciting part of my job, that I know people are watching. I don't care if the sound is down and they're at a bar. I don't care what they're doing, if they're in their comforts of their own home. I just know if something huge happens in sports, they're turning to SportsCenter. And if they're turning for me, that's icing on the cake. But they have to stay up late or get up early, because I do the late SportsCenter out of LA, and then it's re-aired a couple of times in the morning.
So I know you said connecting to fans was one of your favorite parts about being an ESPN anchor and just being involved in sports. I used to live in Omaha, Nebraska, where they had the College World Series. Obviously, ESPN had a live set, and that's when I first saw you from a distance. It's like, oh my
Yeah, I
God,
was there, right? I love that.
that's Linda Cohn. What's your favorite place that you've ever been live with the fan connection that you had around you, whether it was a College World Series or a college game day type of setting? What was
Wow, that's a great question. Listen, that was the one time I went to Omaha. Loved it. Great passion by those fans, and it's a great part of our country. Love that part of our country. But I got to go back to the well, Will. To me, hockey fans are the most passionate. When I go to Madison Square Garden, I feel it's my second home when it comes to the Rangers, because that's probably the most recognized place I am, because I'm a Rangers fan and I'm with my people. You know what it's like, you guys, when you're at a place where they associate you with more than any other place. And I've spent so many games there all through my life. And I have amazing memories with my dad there at MSG. So that's close to my heart. And those fans are close to my heart, because I'm one of them and they're one of me. And there's a bond there, especially with New York Rangers fans. And there will always be that.
We asked Neil Everett his favorite restaurant in Portland. What is your favorite New York City restaurant or place to eat?
Oh, wow. Well, I got a new place to eat. I was back in New York to watch the Ranger playoff games, and I stumbled on this place, and I follow them on Instagram, and they follow me. And it's not like a sit down foo restaurant and all that, where all that. It's called Liberty Bagels. Liberty Bagels. Real menches, as I'd like to say, at Liberty Bagels. I forgot where they're located, but they're right downtown. I've never tasted as great a bagel as Liberty Bagels, but they make them all different colors, all different flavors. I mean, full disclosure, I had like a all kinds of flavors, like crazy flavors of bagels. I used to think going out on a limb was getting an everything bagel, but no, at Liberty Bagels, you could get rainbow colored bagels. You could get Oreo colored bagels that taste like Oreos, crazy stuff. So you can see how my tastes have changed as I gotten older. It's all about comfort.
And the comfort is you continue to be praised. I mean, you're in the Jewish, there's a Jewish Hall of Fame now that I saw that you got put into.
Oh yeah, that was years ago.
Yeah,
the Jewish
but I mean,
Sports Hall of Fame.
as I'm doing the research, and you're in your college Hall of Fame and everything like that, and you've been such just a benchmark. But I always enjoy hearing, because so many people, I was like this first handicap guy at ESPN. I was like this guy on crutches that had no legs. And I think it really helped a lot of my coworkers who that was their first indoctrination to somebody with a disability. And I'm just wondering, kind of after, I don't want your accolades, I just was wondering what was that like to get used to when you're in this workplace and suddenly here's something that we've never had in that workplace. And now they've gotten with the program, and there's much more diversity all around at ESPN, but there weren't many of us when I started there.
Yeah, listen, I was like, I thought this was cool. I thought you were cool. I know you don't want to hear accolades, Dave, but you're just a cool dude. And what I love most is about our, like you mentioned earlier, our conversations were usually nothing about sports. And you would go, like, I'd go by you, or I would I would say the nod or the hi, and you'd always have something to say, to share with me. You never blew me off, which I really love, because there's some people there that blew me off, by the way. We won't mention names. Never look me in the eye. That ain't you. I called you my friend. You were always there for me. Or if I had, a lot of times I had a big mouth, also in the newsroom. And I would go on one of my rants, and you'd get front and center for that as well. But it was wonderful to see. And you're right. Now, thank God, it's we have that diversity, and it's not a big deal, and it never was a big deal. And because of people like you, Dave, your story is truly amazing. You throw flowers at me. My goodness. I'm not even talking about your great Manscaped ads. I'm talking about, I'm talking about your journey. Yeah, there it is.
It's got a light too. So
there it is. What doesn't it have, Dave? That's the bigger question. No, but seriously, I mean, you're a pioneer. You're legendary.
Well, thanks.
And you have inspired so many.
Well, thanks. And I'm glad that I get an outlet like this with Will and Troy, and to get my friends like you to come on, and Kenny and everything. And you were always, you would turn and say, give me a line about Kirby Puckett or Kent Herbeck or something Minnesota. Because, we'd always, better. It was always so East Coast biased with the Red Sox and everything. And we'd have to, we had to represent. But, so I truly treasure, we don't get to see each other enough unless it's at a Super Bowl or something. But it's been great to have you here. And do you have anything you need to promote or anything that's going on other than your website, your podcast too, which is a great podcast?
Well, I'm not doing that particular podcast anymore. I'm thinking of starting a podcast. Okay. No, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. I have this idea. My son and my son is 26. His name is Dan. His last name is Kaufman, and he's a great follow on Twitter, by the way. He's funny as hell. But he sleeps and drinks NFL 24/7. He's like, he doesn't forget a thing. He remembers everything, and he has very bold predictions. And anyway, when we speak on the phone, all we talk about is the NFL. That's all we talk about. So I thought of an idea, and maybe I'll have to find out how you have become such a great success with Rest Stream and all of this stuff that you guys are doing. But it's just, because once we're talking on FaceTime, my son and I'm like, you know what? This could be something. I mean, a mother and son NFL podcast. I know there are a million podcasts, but that's something that Dan and I are thinking about doing, and doing it right. And so that's kind of exciting. But the other thing I'd say, people can, when hockey season starts, go to ESPN Plus, search In the Crease. It's a great hockey highlight show hosted by me. And then I also fill in on SiriusXM Mad Dog Sports Radio, Sports Talk. I take calls. Call me up.
Can I get that number? What's that number?
888 Mad Dog 6, 888-623-3646. ingrained in my head.
Well, we also have to thank our sponsors that are a part of our podcast, Manscaped, Pro Stance, FanDuel, Fresh Clean Threads. So you guys, it's great to have you be a part of this, but it's been even greater to have Linda Cohn be a part of this and spend a lot of time with us. But there are people out there that are going to re-listen to this over and over and over, just like I used to watch that 1 a.m. SportsCenter when I was coming home drunk and hoping it would change. Did the lead-ins change? Did they do a different highlight? But I guess we've given away some of the trade secrets. You guys are on tape. So
yeah, I don't know how many countless times I watched reruns at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah, good stuff. That's the best work is done at that time.
Well, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Troy, as always. And thank you, everybody out there in our podcast. You guys are making us explode, and we wouldn't be there without you guys. So for Troy,
for having me.
For Will, this is the Steven Stein and Geary show. We're going to have to, because we can't, Linda, because.
Why?
Because we already had the T-shirts are already made, and we'd have to, so
yeah,
every guest gets a $5,000 gift certificate and a T-shirt. So that's in the mail to you, Linda.
Nice. I like what Will said, though. He saved the best for last, so we'll go with that.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Continue to watch us, support Manscaped and Fresh Clean Threads. Go to their websites, 20% off for GSS Show. I'm Dave Stevens. We'll see you next time.